All right, so welcome back to Tac Chat. This is episode 4, and Happy New Year, I guess. You know, I wanted to talk about, in December, I talked about, some 5 ways you can, smash those New Year goals, and I wanted to come back and talk about some goals that I smashed. And I wanted to talk about, how you can get back on track. A lot of people get off track. Within the first 2 weeks, they're off track, right? But I'm not going to talk about that today because we've got a lot of serious stuff going on, and it's really easy to get from the point of that Maslow's theory of hierarchy pyramid, and to go from that top down to the bottom. It happens kind of quick, and I see a lot of fear and a lot of different things going on with the coronavirus. And, at the beginning, about, a week and a half ago, I was pretty heartened by some of the things that I was seeing. I was seeing, and this is when it first started happening, and people were getting a little panicked, and I was seeing things, being put out there from both political sides, being put out there kind of, I thought they were sensationalizing it for political purposes, and I'm going to say something real quick on that. What I'm seeing now from politicians is actually bipartisanship and working together with this. So that should tell you that this is, regardless of its origins or how it started, the partisan politics is really their pundits. It's really their followers that are doing it. Right now, I'm seeing politicians actually work together to pass things to help people. I am not about government. I don't like not one government in the world. I worked in the government in several different levels. I was in the military. I am definitely don't trust the government as far as I can throw them, right? And I'm a strong guy, but I can't budge the government. So I don't want to, I'm not trying to, be a statist or anything like that. But what I am saying is when you start seeing politicians bipartisanly working together across the aisle to get things done along these lines, that's enough to make you pause and think, wow, something's going on here. So I looked up, real quick, I looked up some numbers, and, the coronavirus, the COVID-19, okay, and H1N1 are both zoological viruses. They're both going to be passed on from animals to human beings. And I got to say this, I am not an expert. I'm not going to talk long about this virus. I'm not an expert. As an emergency first responder, I have had formal training in bloodborne and airborne pathogens, which means I know exactly this much more than your average citizen. There's people on the front line of this who they're doing the battles. My wife works in the medical profession, and she hasn't panicked yet. When she panics, that might be when I start to get really worried. We're okay so far. So the panic that was being spread in the beginning might not have been called for, but the government right now is in a damned if they do, damned if they don't situation. I'm looking at these numbers, and in the H1N1 virus that came out in 2009, a decade ago, in the United States alone, and this isn't even worldwide, in the United States alone, there was 60.8 million cases of H1N1 in the United States alone, and out of those, 274,000 people needed to be hospitalized, and nearly 13,000 people, 12,469 people, that's a lot of people, died from that virus. Maybe what we're doing now with social distancing or quarantine, let's call it what it is, maybe that's called for. What would we do if the elected officials didn't do this? And we had even more people dead because of this. Maybe they're doing this because, well, hey, we've learned from our mistakes, sort of like what happened during the first Gulf War. We had learned from mistakes that had happened in Vietnam, and things kind of, got different. Yeah, I'm no expert in this, but right now I'm thinking along the lines of one of the things we need to avoid is talking about politics. We need to not even worry about politics at this point in time. I'm a conspiracy type of guy, but I'm not some off the job wacko conspiracy theorist. I have healthy skepticism about what I see in the world. And healthy skepticism is needed with anything to do with government or with anything. Okay, with anything. I got 25 years in law enforcement. You think I've ever been lied to? Ever? So I am naturally a skeptical person about some things. That's cool. Don't be a rigid skeptic. If you're a rigid skeptic, you think everything is a conspiracy. Okay, so we want to go with Occam's razor for right now, which is the simplest explanation is probably the actual right information. I don't know anybody personally who's gotten this yet, but so far, if I look, global cases so far since November. So we're talking 4 months into this. Since November, there's been 236,000 cases with 9,817 deaths worldwide. So far, this is nowhere near as bad as H1N1, especially not in our country. And what we're looking at now, when I can just see, anyone can look up numbers on the internet, 86,676 people have recovered. So it's not something to panic about. I really was not happy with how, the left media was sensationalizing it and acting in such a way that made some people not take it seriously. And then on the other side of things, what did they do? They acted like it was a non-starter, and we now know that they were both wrong. Well, what I'm saying is, this is just through my observations, politicians are working together. They are in a damned if they do, damned if they don't situation. Conspiracy theories aside, that this was a man-made virus, I'm going to leave those alone for now. I think keeping separations is not a bad thing. I think panicking is a bad thing. So we don't want to panic. What else did I want to talk about real quick? Yeah, definitely show compassion. So like I was saying, I was real heartened by what I seen about a week and a half ago, right? And people were being nice. People were helping each other. People were very courteous. And I was very heartened by it. Now about a week later or so, week and a half later, I'm seeing a whole other level of humanity, anxiety. I was in the drive-through today, for a prescription, and this poor lady working the pharmacy got screamed at like by the 3 people in front of me. And then I got up there and I could tell she was flustered, so I was nice to her. They didn't have my prescription. Painkillers, ibuprofen, Motrin, cures almost everything as far as I'm concerned. I was a Marine, so Motrin definitely good to go, right? But they didn't have it. So and she was like, nervous, and I told her, hey, I'm not like that, man. That's cool. When? She said about 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, I'll come back. I still haven't come back. The point is I went out of my way to try to make her smile. We got to understand something, that people are being told to stay home from work. People are being told, to keep to yourself, to quarantine ourselves. I'm gonna call it what it is. Okay, it's not social distancing. We need to quarantine ourselves for a little bit, right? Don't go out unless you need to. They're having people stay home. A lot of people are going under a lot of hardships. They're taking rights away from us. Okay, we are losing rights slowly but surely. And I'm going to put in this video later on, I went and checked out, the 3rd Battalion Marine Reserve Unit close to me. There's nothing going on, because I've seen some stuff on Facebook, and it's something that's worth talking about also is, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that governments of the world will put out there. However, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that people just get off on putting out there. So like I seen something on Facebook, people start panicking. I seen something along the lines of martial law, and they showed a picture of all these Humvees being brought in on a train and claimed it was over here at this reserve station not far from me. So I took a drive over there and went and checked it out. It was business as normal. Absolutely no extra equipment there. So somebody could have snagged that off the internet and they throw it up there, and they get a kick out of like creating a panic. There's nothing going on along those lines yet. And as a jiu-jitsu instructor friend of mine actually put it in a video he put out, and I really liked how he put it. In 2, 3, 4 months from now, if we don't start getting some of these rights back, that's when it's going to be time to really amp things up on our side. But as of right now, to stop the spread of this is not. I'm not saying panic yet. I'm not saying a reason to call to arms, but stay aware. There's nothing wrong with staying aware. I'm going to tell you from very personal, recent experience. Don't even bother engaging anyone on Facebook as far as anything politically involved with anything, because people want to get up there and it's like the Browns versus the Steelers. It's like Michigan State versus Ohio State. Everyone's got that type of mentality with politics, and it's like a religion. I'm not going to even waste my time with it anymore. I should have listened to that advice that I got from somebody who's a little bit better at me than this kind of stuff, and I didn't. But with that being said, if I was going to say the numbers again, there's a lot of people have recovered. We're nowhere near the worldwide outbreak yet. I mean, worldwide, 236,000 people in 4 months. It's a lot. Don't get me wrong. SARS only had like 8,000 as far as SARS was concerned, which is made from the coronavirus also. Hey, that's cool. I'm not going to even edit that shit out of there. So, at any rate, as I'm going through this, it's the medical people are on the front lines of this. You still got police out there. I ran into a cop, seen him at the liquor store. He might have been doing security there. I doubt it. He looked stressed out. There's a lot of higher level of stress. There's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of people fear the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. And, now more than ever in the self-help communities, in the freedom community, in the spiritual community, now is the time to really, really practice what we preach. And now is the time to really live in the moment. Meditate, live in the moment, enjoy your family, enjoy the time you have. I think if you got this alone time, don't be lonely. There's a difference between being lonely and solitude. I enjoy solitude. If people can learn to self-reflect and have some introspection, they won't be afraid to be alone with themselves. Okay? That's another important thing I'm going to talk about eventually. We grow up and live in a shame-based society. We need to realize we're not more than human. We're not less than human. We're human. And we need to understand that there's healthy shame, and then there's, internalized toxic shame that we all have, and people go these great lengths to avoid it. And, I probably need to talk a little bit more about that also, but I'm going to do that in like the PowerPoint presentation portion of this podcast. That portion is only going to be about 10 or 15 minutes long. I'm going to talk about some things with spirituality and natural law and things that I think is important to start putting out there. Okay. As a martial artist, who's also a very spiritual person, I don't train to fight anything in front of me anymore. I train because it's fun, because I'm trying to get better at something that I'll never master, and ultimately, if needed, to protect what's behind me. And right now, we're not at that point where we need to do that. So I think what we need to do is have patience during this thing for right now, patience, and pause, observe, have healthy skepticism, but don't be a rigid skeptic yet. Don't listen to people who are political. There's people that are going to automatically be triggered into something political no matter what you say. And that's the worst thing we can do. That's creating division. Okay? There's enough divisiveness in politics and in world politics too. And on this entire planet throughout humanity, we don't need to create any more division, because half the time people are fighting about crap they're actually on the same side about. They're fighting over the solution of a problem that both people agree with. And when I see politicians actually working together, that's enough to make me take pause for a little bit in several different ways. I'm not going to say in the bad way or the skeptical way yet. I'm just going to say from this is definitely a legit thing going on. Then we need to listen to what's being said for right now and do the best we can to keep the spread of this from happening. Okay. I'll be right back. That was a long intro. I'll be right back. Okay, welcome. This is going to be about a 5-slide presentation. I don't plan on taking a whole lot of time. I took like 11 minutes on the intro, which normally doesn't happen at all. I feel the need to tell a few things that I know to try to help put some people at ease during these times. And the first thing I want to address really quick is, as a former military person, as a former U.S. Marine, the National Guard being activated, the state's National Guard, they're being activated for the same reasons why they got activated for Katrina, or same reasons why they got activated for any number of natural disasters, and that's what this could be considered at this point until we have evidence otherwise. You know, I am suspicious, like everyone is suspicious. The timing to me, you know, from China when freedom protests were going on, it doesn't matter, and I'm going to get into that. It doesn't matter if this virus was man-made or if it's not. There's more evidence scientifically pointing towards that it's not, but I'm no expert. So I'm not going to talk about the virus in depth. What I'm going to talk about is something I think we're having problems with, in the aggregate, in the collective consciousness of humanity, and that is spiritual currency. And spiritual currency is something that we're losing. We're losing it as a whole. And it doesn't matter what denomination we come from. It doesn't matter what version of God you believe with. There is a God, God with a capital G, nature's creator, who created all of this. And we're going to be talking about natural law and some other things today. But in order to collect some spiritual currency, we need to help our fellow man. And that means during these stressful times, be kind. Go shopping for the elderly. Take all the precautions that the CDC is saying to take. Wash your hands. Wear a mask if you have one. It remains 6 feet away. You've heard all these things before. I've had training on airborne pathogens as an emergency responder. That makes me nowhere near an expert. So, and I'm going to get into some of the things that we have to worry about at these times. In fact, only other thing I'll say is, during September 11th, and that's a long time ago, I was 30 years old, and I didn't have no kids at that point in time, but there were a lot of little millennials running around who are now in their 30s. And a lot of you have kids. So, hopefully you had good role models that didn't panic. I know there was a lot of stress on the kids back then. It was addressed, some of the stress that the kids are seeing from all this news. You got to get away from the news. Get outside. Go to nature. I went out to nature today with my daughter. It was great. Do it. Get outside. Get in nature. Your little tribe you're with, be with them. That's part of the problem. There's an epidemic in this world of loneliness that I think is causing. It's contributing to the causal factors of something like this. One of the things I want to talk about after that is one of the main things we have to worry about in something like this is going to be the threat of other human beings, the threat of misinformation and disinformation that's spread. And the reactions of human beings are more dangerous than the actual virus. Okay? The world is in crisis right now. Panicking isn't going to help the crisis. I'm not going to say I'm not a little, disenchanted, angry, and upset about what I'm seeing, but I don't want to take any rash actions. And men, we tend to, and this goes back thousands of years of evolution, we tend to rise to action quickly. That's what we do. We rise to action quickly. We have quicker adrenaline responses. It's biological, and it's there for a reason. So while the women are keeping their wits about them long enough to get the children and escape, we can be the ones fighting and getting eaten by the saber-toothed tigers. And then by the time the women's adrenaline does kick in, they're ready to fight if the threat gets by us and gets to them. That's by nature's design, which is why you leave the house and a half hour later come back after an argument with your wife or your girlfriend or your mom or probably your wife or your girlfriend, and it's over with as far as you are concerned, but they're just getting going. So that's kind of the reason why that happens. There's a biological reason behind it. So right away we want to jump to have some type of response because we feel helpless to do anything about this. And the anxiety that's created by not, the fear of the unknown. That's where anxiety comes from. It comes from the fear of the unknown. And if there's ever a time, like I said in the intro, to be living in the now and have some present moment, it's now. But let's also pay attention to some of the causal factors that can be contributing to this. Don't panic. Don't panic. Easier said than done. Now's the time to keep yourself busy. You have to let go of what you can't control. We can't control this right now. Patience is needed. Okay? Patience. So one of the things that I want to address and talk about is going to be what is natural law and how does it affect everything that's happening in the world today? And what is it? It's basically it's the law of cause and effect. It's the law of karma. It's the law of attraction, the true law of attraction, and what happens. And I've experienced it myself. And there's a working definition for it. And I'm going to give the working definition. I've given it before, but it's worth putting up. So to So to give a working definition on natural law, this is it right here: universal, non-man-made, binding, and immutable conditions that govern the consequences of behavior. Natural law is a body of universal spiritual laws which act as the governing dynamics of consciousness. Now, how I come to understand this was cause and effect. For every cause, there's an effect. And we end up feeling this in our lives in a number of ways. Think about what could have been some of the causes of a virus like this, be it man-made or nature-made. It doesn't matter. The synchronicity of it. There's a cause and effect. And this isn't my opinion. Ego-driven greed, narcissism to the point where everyone's worried about themselves. This is like a me generation, right? This is the me generation. You know, we're all, you ever go to a party and everyone's like this with their cell phone? Everyone's got their cell phone, right? We don't need people anymore. You go on Facebook, and what do we see on Facebook? All our friends, and it satisfies some kind of need, but are we really making real human contact? Most of the time, no. And electronic communications are so often misinterpreted, and everyone's on there talking about negative things and talking about politics, and politics are negative. They're the very nature of politics. You know, when I talked, I don't know if I've actually talked about this shit. I'm going to get into it in a second, but we can go into narcissism, for instance. When you talk about people who have narcissistic tendencies, they never want to admit they're wrong. And I think your life can change when you can admit you're wrong. And it takes just 5 words. It takes practice. And the 5 words are simple as, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Or you can reverse that around and say, I'm sorry. I was wrong. It takes some self-reflection and introspection. Okay, loneliness, as I said, loneliness is an epidemic during this time that we're all being forced to be alone. I wonder why. I wonder why. So what natural law really is, it is the blending of science with true spirituality. When God created the universe, God didn't create science. Man decided to call these natural things science. We wanted to figure out, you know, what gravity was. We wanted to figure out what thermodynamics were. These are all things that are laws of nature within nature. Well, natural law governs our behavior, the consequences of our behavior. How we think, we do, we become, we act. Or we act and become. So in the aggregate, if humanity is at war and stuck in this me thing, and total narcissistic type of behavior, no one is can ever admit they're wrong. You know, we live in this shame-based type of society where there's all this shame, all this like weaponization of shame, and people go through all these different things to avoid shame also. And they don't realize when they're doing that by avoiding the shame, you're weaponizing that shame spiral against yourself. Sometimes just facing it is the best thing you can do. And sometimes that takes saying, hey, you know, I was wrong, I'm sorry. It's not that hard. 5 words: self-reflection and introspection. Any conflict you have in your life, I guarantee you, if you dig deep enough, you're going to find some part where you contributed to that. But it takes honesty with yourself. And we have to start putting out into the world a different feel. We're not putting that out there right now. So this is a picture to kind of represent, and it's definitely it's to represent the microcosm of our lives, of our personal lives. And within that microcosm, what we do affects those around us. What everyone does in the aggregate, in the collective consciousness of this world, ends up going into what we call the macrocosm of the world. This would represent the macrocosm. So the macrocosm is what we're experiencing right now, because the universe read us and basically said, hey, if you all are about yourselves and me, and you never can be wrong, and you guys don't have to have any contact with each other because, well, you're all on social media, and when you are together, you're in your phones. The universe is just responding to the vibration we're putting out. As in the aggregate, as a human species, that's what I really feel about this. And as such, we now have a virus where we have to kind of keep ourselves away from people. We have to isolate now. Now we have to do it. We don't like it. Maybe when all this is said and done, and it's going to be said and done, you know, like I said in the beginning, in the intro, the numbers, we're not in this bad place yet. I don't think we're going to even get there. There's a lot of sensationalism, and there's a lot of fear-mongering from both political parties to win political points. And let's face it, with the news, turn the news off for a while. We already know what we need to do as far as not spreading this disease. We need to shelter in place. We need to stay isolated now. Okay? Wash our hands and stuff. This isn't going to get worse. Turn the news off, because all they're going to do is keep sensationalizing and keep fighting back and forth like it's some human being's fault that this is happening. And I think right now it's all of humanity's fault. It doesn't matter where it came from. We are putting out into the universe, we don't need each other. And the universe has responded, okay, I'm going to give you guys this, and you're going to have to be alone for a while to contemplate that. And I just spent a little bit of time alone, and you know what? There's a difference between loneliness and on purpose isolation. There's a big difference. If you can be alone with yourself, you don't mind being by yourself. So do some self-reflecting and introspection. Take this time to do other things that you haven't had a chance to do because you were too busy working. Read those books you want to read. Spend time with that family member or somebody in your personal tribe that you want to do. Take up, you know, get back into some type of hobby you like. This will blow over. But when it does, we have to reassess, what do we want out of life? I know I don't want just Facebook out of my life, and I know I don't just want electronics out of my life and 5G technology constantly bombarding me with their, you know, RFEs. I want to be as strong as possible for that. Those are other episodes to talk about. But right now, what we need to be putting out to the universe is togetherness. And eventually, we will be able to, you know, go out and socialize again. And maybe this time we will start thinking about things a little bit differently. And this isn't as bad as some people are making it out to be. It's not as bad as the media is making it out to be, but it doesn't mean it's good. I think what they're doing now is going to help us. The isolation is not bad. History shows that. Google it. In today's day and age, I think when they were talking about the difference between Philadelphia and St. Louis, I was listening to, it was either a podcast or they might have had it actually on the news. Every once in a while, they will put some information out there that's good. And just a 2-week difference in isolation meant the difference between thousands of people infected and deaths between St. Louis and who did that on time, and they had a lot less casualties than Philadelphia had back in the 1800s with some plague that happened back then. I don't know the exact year, but it scientifically to me sounds sound. I'm not a scientist. That's not what I'm in here talking about. Natural law governs the consequences of our behavior, and I know this because I have been spiritually bankrupt before. And I think humanity right now is spiritually bankrupt. And I think this is nature's way of saying, hey, wake up. Collectively wake up. You can't remain in this state and move forward as a species together on this earth. Okay? And I've heard a lot of stuff I don't like. I've heard people say, God already has decided what your destiny is, and this and that. There's too many contradicting principles within certain mythoses and religions. God, we have free will. What we do on this planet matters. Any number of events we're presented with, there's a multitude of different actions we can take. And our actions are what governs the consequences. So I don't think my fate has been written in the sand, by God or anybody. God doesn't know the future. He knows probable outcomes, I would say. And again, if I use gender with God, that's just social engineering. I still feel, I know some people feel God is a he. I still feel that God, you can't put gender on divinity. I'm still in that boat. I think it's more than that. It's different than that. But natural law was basically taught by the Hermeticists, and the Hermeticists understood natural law. It was occulted information. They understood science is what it really is. And I used to call this stuff supernatural, and I don't call it supernatural anymore. Now I call it what it really is. It's simply natural. Jesus taught natural law. There's only 7 transgressions against natural law: murder, rape, assault, trespass, theft, coerce, and lying. So, like I might have already gone over those in politics, there's a lot of coercion and lying. So it's in violation of natural law by its very nature. Okay, all men were created equal. Under our Creator, we were given inalienable rights. There's nobody who is more important than anyone else. Okay, some people have more knowledge in a given area, but there's no one's life is worth more than anyone else's. We don't see that, but that's the truth. So that's something that we need to start putting out into. I think in the aggregate, we need to put that out into the macrocosm of this world to help keep stuff like this from happening. I'm going to talk about, real quick what our rights are. What is a right? Before I get into that, I just want to reiterate, there's a difference between loneliness and isolation, which is what a lot of people are finding out we're going to be in, and what I hope everyone ends up in, and that's just solitude. Solitude is not a bad thing, and it gives you that time to self-reflect and introspect. And one of the things you think about is, what is a right? We're having our rights taken away from us. We need to be sheltering in place right now to stop the spread of this. And our rights are being taken away. But what is a right? Whenever you ask somebody, what are your rights? Most people will say, I've had this actually said to me, whatever I'm legally allowed to do. And under natural law, that's not accurate. Marijuana is still illegal in some states, so it's not legal to do. But is it immoral? Okay. Anything that you do that does not bring harm to another sentient being is what a right is. So a right is not an adjective, it's not an adverb, it's a verb, it's an action. It's any action that you take that does not bring harm to another sentient being. Period. End of story. That's what your rights are. Don't read any more into it than that. You don't need to read into it any more than that. And that's what we need to get the world in alignment with. It's one of the reasons why I'm about anarchy, because true anarchy is spiritual. It's not the craziness that we're seeing now in the world. And we don't have anarchy in any government right now, do we? But there it is. Right is not an adjective or an adverb. Rights are a verb. Any action that does not bring harm to another sentient being. I messed that up in there. I shouldn't have the A there. But you get the point. So we have to know what our rights are. So at the end of this, when this starts to blow over, they keep talking about that, that curve flattening out, right? When this starts to blow over in a couple of months or a month or a few weeks, however long it's going to be. It's why I went over the numbers in the beginning in the intro. Their numbers aren't bad yet. They're sensationalizing this, okay? Don't let them do that. Don't let them get you. Get off the news. Don't just quit watching the news for a while. We already know to wash our hands and to stay 6 feet away from people and social distancing. Okay. We got to be careful of social engineering, but for right now, quarantining ourselves and social distancing is the main thing. This isn't as bad as they're making it out to be. The media likes to sensationalize stuff, So as long as we get our rights back, there's nothing to panic about. There's nothing to panic about. And most people are human lie detectors. I was watching some people on TV talk today. I'm not going to say who, but they were politicians dealing with this, and I didn't sense nothing. They don't know too much more than what we know, at least some of them, okay? So this isn't like there's some evil, wicked stuff going on everywhere. It's not. Let's give it some time. Let's be patient. Let's observe what's going on. Let's be vigilant. Let's make sure we get every right back intact that they have to take away right now. And remember, in the aggregate, why this is happening. I believe this is happening because we wanted to be alone, because we want to be right all the time. We can never be wrong, because we want to fight on Facebook and send mean texts and stuff to each other, or be with our friends, but actually be in our phones. I can't stress it enough. The universe is like, okay, that's what you want. You can have that. So we need to put something back out into the macrocosm that's a little more positive. We need to realize we do need each other and not rely on technology so much. If there was, we'd be put back into the Stone Ages if the sun was to throw an EMP at this earth and knock out our electronics for a few weeks and knock out all power. What would happen to us? We're starting to see some of the breakdown of what can happen in society. We're going to see some of the worst things that you can see, but I don't want to leave people with that. The time is always right to do what is right, and what is right now is to shelter in place, have patience, observe, be vigilant. But listen to what the CDC and science is saying to do. And remember, even though we're going to see some bad things because of anxiety-ridden people, usually a lack of patience, and I've been guilty of that, I guarantee you we're going to also see some of the best that humanity has to offer. We've seen it during every war, every conflict. We've seen it during 9/11. We pull together. That's what this country does. We pull together. So now more than ever, don't politicize anything. Get off the partisan boat. Get out of politics. This is a human matter. This is not a political matter. And watch the valor that this country is capable of.